I never imagined that my life would take such a drastic turn during that winter in Lagos. I was 30 years old and thought I had everything perfectly arranged. I was happily married to Tunde for 5 years, enjoyed a successful career, and lived in a charming house nestled in the peaceful suburbs of Leh. My days were filled with the pleasant routine of work, family, and home, and I felt content and secure. But all of that was about to change. It started with a phone call from my best friend Amora as I sipped my morning coffee and listened to the radio play softly in the background. The phone rang, breaking the calm of the morning. Amora's voice on the other end was filled with a mixture of urgency and distress that immediately made my heart race. Little did I know that this call would unravel the seemingly perfect life I had worked so hard to build. "Chinelo, I need to ask you a huge favor," Amora said, her voice tinged with concern. "It's about my son, Chick. He's just been accepted into the University of Lagos to study architecture, but I don't know anyone there who can help him get settled. Do you think you could?" Her voice trailed off. She didn't need to finish the sentence. Amara and I had been inseparable since our days at Anaka, and though life had taken us on different paths, she moved to Aya while I stayed in Lagos. Our friendship remained unshakable. "Of course," I replied without hesitation. "I'd be happy to help Chick. He can stay with us until he finds his own place." I vaguely remembered Chick from the few times we had met at family gatherings. The last time I saw him, he was about 16, a lanky, shy teenager. Now, 7 years later, I was preparing to welcome a young adult into my home. On the day of his arrival, Tunde and I went to pick him up at the airport. As we waited at the terminal, my mind wondered what Chick might be like now. Would he still be that shy boy? Or had he grown into a confident young man? The answer came when I saw him walk through the arrival gates. My heart skipped a beat. Chick had transformed into a tall, athletic man with a captivating smile and deep brown eyes that seemed to see right through you. His ebony skin glistened under the airport lights, and his neatly trimmed hair added a touch of sophistication to his otherwise relaxed appearance. For a moment, I was breathless. "Auntie Chinelo," Chick exclaimed when he saw us, using that affectionate title he had always called me, though we weren't related by blood. He hugged me tightly, and I felt the firmness of his body against mine. A shiver ran down my spine, and I quickly pulled away, bewildered by my own reaction. Tunde, oblivious to my discomfort, welcomed Chick with the warmth of an elder brother. During the drive home, Chick talked about his study plans and his excitement at starting this new chapter in Lagos. I tried to focus on the conversation, but I couldn't help stealing glances at him in the rearview mirror, meeting those intense brown eyes that watched me with a disconcerting intensity. The first few days passed without incident. I dedicated myself to showing Chick around the city, helping him familiarize himself with the campus and surroundings. Tunde, busy with his work as a corporate lawyer, barely spent time at home, which left Chick and me alone most of the day. It was during one of these city tours that things began to change. We were walking through the lush gardens of Freedom Park when Chick suddenly stopped and looked at me intently. "Auntie Chinelo, I want to thank you for everything you're doing for me," he said in a soft voice that made my skin tingle. "I don't know how I could have adapted so quickly without your help." "You don't have to thank me, Chick," I replied, trying to maintain a casual tone. "It's my pleasure to help you." He took a step closer, shortening the distance between us. "No, really. You're amazing. I've always admired you. You know, since I was a kid." His words took me by surprise, and I felt a blush rise to my cheeks. For a moment, I lost myself in his eyes. It was then that I realized how dangerous this was becoming. I took a step back, breaking the spell. "We should head back," I said hastily. "It's getting late, and Tunde will be home soon." The walk back was charged with a silent tension. I could feel Chick's gaze on me, and every time our arms accidentally brushed, an electric current ran through my body. "This is wrong," I repeated to myself over and over. "He's your best friend's son. He's young enough to be your son. You're married, for heaven's sake." But despite my efforts to maintain composure, something had changed. The following days were a sweet torture. Every moment alone with Chick was an internal battle between desire and reason. I found myself dressing up more than usual, carefully choosing my clothes each morning as if I were a teenager preparing for a date. One afternoon, while showing Chick how to use the washing machine in the basement, the inevitable happened. We were alone in the house. Tunde had left town on business. As we bent down to load the clothes, our hands brushed. We both froze. The electricity in the air was palpable. Slowly, Chick turned to me, his eyes burning with a desire that mirrored my own. "Chinelo," he whispered, and before I could react, his lips were on mine. The kiss was intense, passionate, releasing all the tension that had built up over weeks. My hands tangled in his hair as he pressed me against the washing machine. For a moment, I allowed myself to get lost in that sensation, the taste of his lips, the heat of his young, vigorous body against mine. But then, like lightning, reality struck. I pulled away abruptly, panting, "No, Chick, this is wrong. We can't," I said, my voice trembling. "Why not?" he asked, his eyes full of confusion and desire. "I know you feel it too. Chinelo, you can't deny it. I'm a married woman, Chick, and you're my best friend's son. This can happen," I replied, though every fiber of my being screamed otherwise. I hurried out of the basement, leaving Chick alone and confused. I locked myself in my room, my heart racing. What had I done? How had I allowed things to go so far? That night, as I lay in bed next to Tunde, who had returned late from his trip, I couldn't sleep. My mind kept replaying the kiss with Chick, the feeling of his lips, the warmth of his body. I felt guilty, scared, but also alive, more alive than I had felt in years. The following days were an uncomfortable dance of furtive glances and tense conversations. Chick and I tried to act normally in front of Tunde, but the atmosphere in the house had become electric. Every accidental touch, every moment alone, was charged with barely contained sexual tension. One afternoon, while Tunde was at work, Chick found me in the kitchen. He approached me with determination. "Chinelo, we can't go on like this," he said in a low voice. "I know you're married. I know this is complicated, but what I feel for you is real. I can't just ignore it." I sighed, leaning on the counter. "Chick, I feel something too, but this can't be. There's too much at stake." He moved closer until I could feel the heat of his body. What if we found a way? What if we could be together without anyone getting hurt? His words were tempting, dangerously tempting. Part of me wanted to give in, to throw myself into his arms and forget about everything else. But the rational part of my mind kept fighting. "I don't know how we could do that, Chick," I replied sadly. "Let me show you," he whispered. And before I could protest, his lips were on mine again. This time, I didn't have the strength to resist. I surrendered to the kiss, allowing my hands to explore his young, firm body. We kissed with unbridled passion, as if the world was about to end at any moment. When we finally separated, panting, I knew I had crossed a point of no return. I could no longer deny what I felt for him, nor what he felt for me. But I also couldn't ignore the complications this would bring to our lives. "We have to be careful," I finally said. "If we're going to do this, no one can know. No one." Chick nodded solemnly. "I understand. It'll be our secret." And so began our clandestine affair. Over the next few weeks, Chick and I managed to find moments alone, stealing kisses and caresses when Tunde wasn't home. Each encounter was a mix of unbridled passion and suffocating guilt. I felt like a teenager again, experiencing the thrill of forbidden love, the adrenaline of almost being caught, the complicit glances during family dinners, the coded text messages. All of it added an excitement to my life that I hadn't felt in years. But as time passed, the guilt began to weigh more heavily. Every time Tunde kissed me or told me he loved me, I felt as if I were being stabbed in the heart. Thinking about Amora, about how she would react if she ever discovered what was happening between her son and me, filled me with paralyzing fear. One night, while Chick and I were entangled in each other's arms, The weight of what we were doing finally became unbearable. We were in my living room. The lights dimmed to a soft glow. The air was thick with the scent of his cologne, mingling with the tension that had been building between us for weeks. As he held me close, I could feel his heartbeat against my chest, strong and steady, yet somehow fragile in that moment. But instead of feeling the usual rush of excitement, I felt a sinking dread. The walls around us seemed to close in, and the reality of our situation hit me like a tidal wave. I pulled away from Chick, my breath catching in my throat as tears welled up in my eyes. "We have to stop this," I whispered, my voice trembling. "I can't do this anymore. Chick, I can't keep lying to Tunde. I can't keep betraying Amora." Chick's face fell, and for a moment, he looked as if he might argue, as if he might try to convince me that we could keep going, that we could keep this secret hidden. But then he saw the tears in my eyes, the anguish on my face, and he knew that I was serious. "I know," he finally said, his voice barely audible. "I know it's wrong. I couldn't help myself. I couldn't stop thinking about you." His words were like a dagger to my heart, twisting the guilt inside me even further. I knew exactly how he felt because I had been unable to stop thinking about him too. But that didn't make it right. It only made the betrayal worse. "We've gone too far," I said, my voice breaking. "We can't undo what's been done, but we can stop it from getting worse. We need to end this. Chick, we need to stop before we destroy everything, before we destroy everyone we love." Chick nodded slowly, his eyes filled with a sadness that mirrored my own. He reached out and gently brushed a tear from my cheek. "You're right. We have to stop. But it won't be easy." I nodded, knowing that ending our affair would be the hardest thing I had ever done. The connection between us was undeniable, and the thought of never feeling his touch again, of never seeing that spark in his eyes, was almost unbearable. But it was nothing compared to the pain we would cause if we continued down this path. The next few days were agonizing. Chick and I avoided each other, both of us trying to put distance between us to make the separation easier. But the strain of pretending everything was normal, of hiding the truth from Tunde and Amora, was overwhelming. Then, one evening, as I was sitting alone in the living room, Tunde came home early from work. He walked into the room and sat down beside me, his eyes searching mine with an intensity that made my heart race. "Is something wrong, Tunde?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he took my hand in his and looked at me with a tenderness that nearly broke me. "I know," he finally said, his voice soft but firm. My heart stopped. You know? "I know about you and Chick," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. The room seemed to spin around me, and I felt as if the ground had been pulled out from under my feet. I tried to speak, but no words came. All I could do was stare at him, my mind racing as I tried to understand how he could possibly know. "I saw the way you two looked at each other," Tunde continued, his voice laced with pain. "I didn't want to believe it at first. I thought I was just imagining things. But then I found the messages on your phone, and I couldn't ignore it anymore." Tears streamed down my face as I realized the extent of the hurt I had caused. I had been so focused on my own desires, on the thrill of the affair, that I had completely disregarded the man I had promised to love and honor. "Tunde, I'm so sorry," I choked out, my voice barely audible through the tears. "I never wanted to hurt you. I never wanted any of this to happen." He squeezed my hand gently, his own eyes filled with unshed tears. "I know, Chidinma, but that doesn't change what happened. I need to understand why. Was it something I did? Was I not enough for you?" "No, Tunde," I said quickly, shaking my head. "This isn't your fault. You were always enough. You still are. I just made a terrible mistake. I got caught up in something that I should have walked away from. I was selfish, and I let my emotions take control. But this isn't about you. It's about me and my own flaws." We sat in silence for what felt like an eternity, the weight of everything that had been said hanging heavy in the air. Finally, Tunai let out a long sigh and released my hand. "I don't know what to do," he admitted, his voice cracking. I love you, Chidinma. But I don't know if I can get past this. I don't know if I can ever trust you again. My heart shattered at his words, and I realized that I might have lost him forever. The thought was too much to bear, and I broke down sobbing uncontrollably as the reality of what I had done came crashing down around me. Tunai stood up and walked to the door, pausing for a moment before turning back to look at me. I need some time to think, he said quietly. I need to figure out if I can forgive you, but I want you to know that I love you. I always have, and that's why this hurts so much. With that, he walked out of the room, leaving me alone with my thoughts, my guilt, and the overwhelming fear that I had destroyed the best thing that had ever happened to me. As the door closed behind him, I realized that no matter what happened next, nothing would ever be the same again. I had made a choice, and now I had to live with the consequences. The affair was over, but the scars it left behind would remain a constant reminder of the pain I had caused and the trust one had shattered. As I sat there in the dimly lit room, I knew that the hardest part was yet to come, the long, painful journey of trying to rebuild what had been broken, if that was even possible.